Everything that exists unfolds within interconnected systems: cells, ecosystems, organisms, communities. These systems are not mere functional cogs, but structures that sustain the very meaning of existence. Metamorphosis, in this framework, is not only a biological process, but an ontological transition. A being ceases to be what it was to become another way of being in the world. The caterpillar, upon becoming a butterfly, not only changes its body, it changes its world. In Heideggerian terms, its being in the world changes. Its horizon of meaning is transformed. The caterpillar inhabits a one-dimensional world made up of branches, limited to foliage and crawling. After its metamorphosis, its existence is transfigured. It no longer belongs to the same ecosystem, but enters another dimension, aerial and three-dimensional. Even more radical is the change of the mosquito, which goes from living submerged in water to flying in the air after emerging from its chrysalis. In both cases, the being not only changes form, but also world. Its new condition demands a profound transformation to inhabit a different dimension. The same can be said of the human being. Those who work on constructing their soul, like an internal chrysalis, prepare to transcend the earthly dimension to another, for which it changes in order to prepare to exist in another ecosystem, another dimension. It mutates to be ready to inhabit another ontological ecosystem, the utope, the good place, accessible only to those with an appropriate ontic signature. This metamorphosis reveals something essential about being. It is not fixed, but rather is realized in transition, in the abandonment of a previous form to emerge in another. Authentic being, as Heidegger proposed, is defined by openness to death, to the possibility of non-being, a condition for the emergence of a fuller existence. To metamorphose is to die in order to become something else. And from there, a natural soteriology is proposed, salvation not as external redemption, but as internal transformation. It is not divine intervention, but rather conscious becoming. One leaves the world, without attachment or anchors to hold one. One is reborn in another dimension of existence. In this view, salvation is not a miraculous act, but an inner task. The caterpillar is not redeemed by another. It is redeemed by transforming itself. The human soul, likewise, is not saved by decree, but by consciously undergoing its metamorphosis. The possibility of transcendence is intimately linked to the value of ceasing to be in order to continue being. It is a transition that demands leaving behind inauthentic forms and embracing finitude as a condition of meaning. This leads to a different conception of death, not as a biological cessation, but as an ontological threshold. Preparing to cross it does not mean adhering to dogmas or rituals, but rather building a being capable of inhabiting dissolution. Instead of a religious morality, a profound work of individuation, authenticity, and vital coherence is proposed. Building the soul is not about accumulating external merits, but rather achieving a more essential form of life. Salvation is the final expression of a fulfilled existence. Those who have cultivated that soul, who dared to think for themselves, with anabasis, who were an egonaut for much of their life, vibrate in tune with others who have done the same. They recognize each other, not by creed, but by ontological affinity. On the other hand, those who have lived as drones of the horde, immersed in automation and the blind obedience of Das Man and the genius of the species, reach death without wings, like a caterpillar that has not been transfigured. The hypothetical natural Christ, tuner of being, could say to that larva that failed in its final attempt to become a butterfly, "I don't know you," not as punishment, but because there is no vibratory affinity in a utope full of butterflies. They don't share the same essence. Metamorphosis requires effort, clarity, and a profound willingness to change. Not every life transforms. And to the extent that transformation is a possibility and not a guarantee, it requires responsibility. True life consists in living in such a way that death becomes a passage and not a loss. This implies letting go of dead forms, abandoning masks, the structures of fear and lies. Like the dragonfly that leaves the water to fly, the human being must cast off its earthly moorings and take flight toward its fullest form. The soul can be imagined as a ship. Only well-built boats cross the ocean of the unknown upon death. The others are stranded, thanks to their attachment to the world of possessions and reproduction, because they have never ceased to be addicted to the hedonistic onanism. Therefore, they are incapable of casting off, even when held by anchors and strong chains to the shore of worldly attachments that rarely connect with consciousness. Ontic dangers are adhesive forces that prevent flight when being transmuted. The unconstructed soul is unable to release these bonds. It is chained to the earth, trapped in its larval phase, without wings, without a journey, without transcendence. This is a condition of possibility for the soul's unfolding. Thus the Gospel of Thomas warned, "If you bring forth what is within you, it will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, it will destroy you." Spiritual ignorance, lack of knowledge, and inner inertia are forms of ontological stagnation. As in Plato, those who do not undertake anabasis, the soul's inner ascent, remain chained in the cavern of shadows. Heidegger called this larval existence inauthentic, being the Dasein that disperses, that lives according to the one, Das Man, that does not accept its death, that does not appropriate its freedom. Jung conceived it as the unindividualized psyche, dominated by the mask, the lie, the false face not integrated into its essential core, the self. For Gnostics, it is the dormant soul that has not given birth to the inner Christ, which is what we discover when we know ourselves through sincerity and honesty. And for Buddhism, it is the mind trapped in avidya, in the illusion of self and desire. In all these systems, the immature soul is an unfulfilled promise. It was not evil, but unfinished. It was not lost. It simply did not exist. As in nature, in the soul too, there are conditions that can block metamorphosis. Parasites of religious ideas that generate guilt, attachment and emotional dependence, lies, and alienation. These forces impede the health of the soul, eroding its inner integrity. In biology, a caterpillar can be devoured by wasp larvae before forming its chrysalis. Outwardly, it appears intact, but its interior has been corrupted. Likewise, the soul can be invaded by false models, imposed beliefs, and toxic emotions. The potential is there, but the pleroma does not flourish. This deficiency of being, this impossibility of being born, is what we call here ontopenia, a poverty of being, a radical lack of unfolding. Like Penia in Greek mythology, the goddess of necessity, ontopenia marks essential inadequacy, the lack of internal structure to sustain the ontological leap. It is not a moral sin, but a failure to be. In this context, the doctrine of the canonical Christ has been one of the deepest historical causes of ontopenia. For centuries, it has taught that belief is enough to be saved, that the sacrifice of another, the lamb, the scapegoat, is enough to erase sins. But this teaching denies the need for transformation. Forgiveness without amendment arrests the soul. To forgive without metamorphosis is to impede inner unfoldment. It is to offer salvation without truth, without work, without soul. It is to condemn by omission. Thus, entire generations have been trained not to convert, not to think, not to be. They have delegated their being to an external figure, expecting redemption as an undeserved gift. The result is tragic: stagnant souls, without self-knowledge, without authenticity. The canonical Christ, institutionalized, domesticated, has not been a guide to awakening, but rather the guardian of stagnation. He has not taught us to die in order to be reborn, but to believe in order to obey. It is undesirable for a butterfly caretaker to intervene when the butterfly is struggling to emerge from its chrysalis. If they are assisted, they will be forced to open the cocoon they would have to tear open with their own effort, preventing their wings from developing. The lymph in their bodies doesn't circulate due to lack of physical effort, their structure doesn't strengthen, and as a result, they are unable to fly and die. The act of helping kills. Metamorphosis cannot be delegated to another. This principle governs not only nature, but also the metamorphosis of the human being, when the soul is ready to cast off. Any authentic process of transformation requires one's own effort, an awakened conscience, and a lucid will. Therefore, offering salvation as a gift, without merit or inner work, is a veiled form of condemnation. By what right does the canonical Christ promise the fullness of being to those who have not followed their own path? to those who have not struggled to break out of their own existential chrysalides. Like butterflies assisted in their chrysalis, these souls have been unable to fly. The process was stolen from them in the name of love. They were offered spiritual comfort, but denied the fire of their metamorphosis. And like engineering students who receive all the answers to pass the exam, they receive their degree without knowing engineering. True redemption is not a decree, but a becoming. It is not received, it is conquered. It is an interior act, a work of lucidity and will. No one can live for another, nor think for another, nor be born for another. And therefore, no one can save another if they have not begun to fly for themselves. The soul cannot be saved, it must learn to save itself. The soul is a sacred chrysalis, but it is also fragile. If it is opened from the outside, it dies. If its process is impeded, it is not born. And in that tension lies its destiny, to become a winged being, or to remain forever an unfulfilled promise, barely a larva. There is no birth without a tearing. There is no being without a transition. Institutionalized religions, instead of accompanying this process, are a plague, a pestilence of ontopenia. They have offered formulas instead of paths, consolation instead of truth, empty rituals instead of living transformation and true learning. Instead of midwives of the soul, they have been guardians of the cocoon. Instead of encouraging flight, they have halted it with the anchor of attachment. And so, spirituality has been emptied. It has become a soulless structure, a tradition without fire. Because transcendence is not a gift or an accident. It is the work of the soul. It is the ultimate alchemy of being. And that is why only those who, in life, prepare for death can transcend. They prepare not with fear, but with authenticity. Not with obedience, but with lucidity. Not with dogma, but with lived truth. The soul that learns to die before dying does not fear the end, because its flight has already begun. And when the body ceases, it will not fall like a dry leaf, but will rise like one who had learned to fly long before passing away. So, do not seek salvation because you will lose it, but instead seek improvement, beauty, truth, the pleroma of being. Salvation is only an addition.